increasing its fiscal space and international investments. Another focus is the program pivoted to climate change after the disastrous floods that we faced back in 2022. And today's event is primarily about the climate investment opportunities in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and to talk about the importance of such initiatives for Pakistan largely and KP specifically. So without further ado, I would like to request Kashmali Khan, Project Director of SEED Program, to please head towards the podium and give a presentation on the
comprehensive report on carbon credit potential, pre-selection and implementation recommendations, an assessment of cost benefit, environmental benefits, and commercial viability of potential carbon credit projects, and investment facilitation through investment frameworks, including PPP. Moving on to number 3, the potential for ecotourism. KP hosts 3/4 of the country's tourism assets, with huge influx of domestic and foreign tourists in recent years. According to a survey conducted by the World Bank on four tourist destinations in KP, tourism provides employment to over 8,600 individuals and contributes to $650 million to the total economy annually. This presents an opportunity to promote ecotourism and climate-smart tourism through integrated tourism zones. The ITC initiative has been conceptualized and introduced by the government of KP in order to design and deliver a low-carbon pathway to urban development. There's already quite a bit of work that's being done led by the government of KP on development of ITCs. And these four integrated tourism zones that are currently being implemented are ITC Janor and Macquarie, which is in the advanced stages of development, ITC Tangyal and Rush, which is represent upcoming investments. Moving on to hydropower potential in KP. KP provides 1/3 of the total energy production of the country through hydropower plants. KP's cumulative hydropower project pipeline has a generational capacity of 6,820 megawatts. The hydro potential makes it an ideal destination for generating renewable energy. The investments in the pipeline include $40 million corporate finance facility, an $80 million investment project finance facility. Other investments include a $1 billion Rose Panka hydropower project, which is there's a feasibility study that is being conducted by Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power. Use of renewable captive power for local industry development and renewable energy credits trading of KP's hydropower credit transactions. Food security and food processing is also very significant both in its potential and significance for KP. KP has a huge agricultural production potential. Infrastructure development has converted the southern region of the province as an ideal location to go food and health food security issues. Over 400,000 hectares are available. KP has given us a mind. KP has planned an economic zone in the urban area of DI Khan. The potential to process food security concerns of Pakistan as well as that of the Middle Eastern market. There's a great potential to address those concerns through this project. There's also an immense potential in developing resilience and adapting to food shortages that have been triggered through this particular investment. A feasibility study on the urban economic zone has been completed and initial negotiations with potential LPG investors is underway. Economic zone will be an agro-based food processing zone that will address Pakistan's food security concerns and those in the GCC market. This one has great potential in developing resilience to food shortages triggered by climate change. Potential investments in fruit and vegetable growing, storage and exports can be explored. I'll pause here. The objective of this presentation was merely to give an overview of the portfolio of investments that are currently being explored by the government of India. And we are, of course, helping them in design solutions and bringing good climate investments. I'll pause here because we have an esteemed panel of experts, and I would request Sharial to introduce our moderator and panel. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Kashmali, for the presentation. And now we head towards the panel discussion. And this session will be moderated by Sayyida Harika Jamshed. So, Hikar, would you head towards the podium and start your session, please?
Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining in, and it's good to see so many familiar faces, and thank you so much Kashmani for the presentation. So starting our panel discussion, and as you know that Pakistan is at the forefront of climate impacts, and adaptation is our main priority, but having said that, we cannot forget and we cannot ignore that the mitigation is part of this whole process, and there is a huge potential and opportunity for Pakistan in this mitigation related activities and using it as a carbon finance in future. And carbon market remains one of the major instruments, and we have been exploring that for the past 4 to 5 years, how we can best tap into it, and how we can generate revenue, which we can later on invest in adaptation-related activities in Pakistan as well. The co-benefits Pakistan can get out of these mitigation activities, and also to open this market for Pakistan and make it enabling environment for all the private sectors. And this discussion, the main objective is to have an open discussion from the donor side, from the developer side, from the registrar side, what a country like Pakistan should look at and how they should move forward as being new to this whole process. So thank you everyone for joining in, and I will start and just to add on to this, the whole discussion will also focus on the project we are focusing in KP programs, the nature-based solution, the project funded by SEED. So from the voluntary carbon market as whole carbon market in general, and from the nature-based solution side as well. We are starting our panel with two major actors of voluntary carbon market and carbon market, Vera and Gold Standard. And I think Vera colleague is on his way. So I'm going to start with Gold Standard, being one of the major players of voluntary carbon market, where most of the projects are registered. You have almost 3,000 projects in 100 countries. You're creating 41 billion shared value, and you aim to reach 100 billion by 2030. So my question is that what are the implications of Article 6 and recent discussion on participation in VCM, and what are your thoughts into shift occurring in the VCM landscape, and how the market is fluctuating and people are questioning about the standards and the integrity. So looking from that point of view and looking from a point of view of a country like Pakistan and nature-based solution, what do you have to say about that?
Actually, we'll hear you better if you go to the next row.
My voice straight away. Well, thank you very much for the introduction, and thanks for inviting Gold Standard today. I really appreciate it. And I thought the story told of the kind of richness and beauty of the region and its potential in terms of the story it's got to tell is really important. So one of the kind of primary things for the carbon market is that it's an instrument that is trying to sell a story as well as the mechanics of climate mitigation. And so starting with the clarity of story, I think is exactly right. In terms of what's happening right now in the space, so clearly there's, I would say, two major forces happening right now. One is an immense amount of scrutiny on the market. So we've seen a lot of criticism in the media amongst civil society activists, and much of that criticism is fair. There have been past mistakes in the carbon market, there have been things that need to be put right. And I would encourage everybody to embrace the scrutiny, even if it can be a little painful sometimes, because it does make the market better. And what we've seen, I think, with that scrutiny is the people, the actors, the companies, the standards like mine that come out of that scrutiny the best are the ones that reflect upon it honestly. So I think the second big takeaway, and from the introductory presentation is really clear, is to approach this idea of using carbon markets to support your development with honesty and integrity. So it's not just free money, the carbon market. It does come with somebody else being able to say they've offset their emissions, for example. And so to survive in that space, the best way is with integrity and authority and honesty. So The other big force happening in the market right now is the changing norms and standards around it. So clearly we're at COP28, the biggest show in town in carbon markets right now is Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. And what that will do, a bit like the Kyoto Protocol mechanisms did, is start to crystallise some norms at a country level, an international level. And so a lot of the market will begin to revolve around Article 6. So although it's complicated, and although it's not finished yet, that's kind of helpful if you're trying to build a market where you don't really exist in it yet, like this region, because you can kind of grow with Article 6. You've got an opportunity to learn at the same time as everybody else, because actually nobody else is any further advanced in Article 6 than the region is right, because it is new. So the kind of last takeaway from me would be to say, Article 6 is for sure coming. It is for sure going to be the thing, the star or the sun around which the market orbits. And now is a really good opportunity to keep up to date with it and kind of embed yourselves in that process so that when it is finalised, you're already ready to go. And there's nobody further ahead of you because it is so new in itself.
Thank you so much for that insight, and I think that's, as you said, everything is revolving around the same program. As I was at a session yesterday and someone said markets are never meant to be perfect, so why are we even trying to make them perfect? So it's how the whole market system works. So moving on to our next panelist, Leonie, Head of Source and Portfolio Management at Climate Partner. Climate Partner is a carbon asset value chain through advisory and expertise that provide the much needed guidance to carbon players to have its impact as well. You have a roster of around 600 clients, and Climate Partner not only supports the clients in calculating their emissions, but you also support them financing those projects. From that side, from the developer and the financing side, what are your thoughts like? How Pakistan can get into this, and what are the opportunities, and which areas we have to focus more on, and and also looking at from the nature-based solution side.
Sure, thank you, and also thanks for inviting me. And I think for us, as someone like we're doing carbon calculation for our clients, we're helping them to set reduction targets to act on them, and then after that, investing into climate action. So I think for us, maximum integrity is key, and same for our clients. So what they want to invest in this project will deliver impact that go beyond just carbon. So I think the types of projects that we're looking for or looking to develop is really community-centered projects that focus on SDGs and that deliver those
There is a student background noise of
to connect clients to projects need
if you just see the YouTube, there is a wall, and just opposite to that wall there is a France pavilion, and they have many discussions and talks, and all the noises coming
to share information from each other. So I think that's the type of project that our clients are looking for. We're enjoying playing a big part in connecting really countries with end demand and end clients looking to invest and purchase carbon credits or really invest or start up in project development.
If I can ask you a follow-up question on this, like storytelling, can you just a bit further explain on this? And as per my understanding, Pakistan is a perfect storytelling country at this point, from the economic point of view, from the climate change point of view, from the gender point of view. So can you shed some light from the countries which are similar to Pakistan and how we can learn from those countries?
Of course, sure. I think what clients are looking for is to address or to reach the most vulnerable communities, those that are hit hardest by climate change. They don't have the financial means or are very limited to address climate mitigation. So that's what I mean with storytelling, right? And reach those countries that need it, those communities that have the ideas, that know how to change, that just need that extra finance, and helping clients to understand that their impact, their money is making a huge impact. I mean, $1 spent in Pakistan or in Kenya is just transforming much more than $1 spent in Germany, for example, right? It's a huge leverage to change. And I think we have all the technology we need to counter climate change. We just need to act. And it's the same for nature-based solutions. I mean, they're one of our most precious carbon things. So avoiding further deforestation should be a top priority. This is the one single solution for climate change. We need to act quick, right? We have to reduce our emissions, but we also have to make sure that we stop releasing more emissions into the atmosphere. So nature-based solutions are an awesome way to tackle that, to either preserve and conserve forests or wetlands that are already there, or mangroves, specifically in Pakistan, or to do afforestation when we've already lost nature. So I think that's most important. And for any line, there's the carbon component, knowing that this is very potent and powerful carbon sink, but there's also the topic of biodiversity. We know that these places, these forests, are a huge hub for biodiversity, that they are home to endangered species, and that they are also obviously home to people. So that story around it, right, counting towards SDGs, also making sure that people benefit from these projects. So it's not about just saying that if we're preserving this forest now, people have to move away. It's really about engaging with the communities, asking them, what do you need from us to be able to preserve this forest? So that's the main question that we need to ask ourselves. We have to make sure that communities are earning more from preserving than they would earn from cutting forests. So I think that's always the big question that has to be in the center of every project development, and then obviously also delivering upon that. And if we're able to deliver, then people on site will be the best agents of change. They're going to inspire other people to join the movement. So that's what our main goal is, essentially.
Thank you. As you have mentioned, this makes this whole process not just a mitigation instrument. So you have to have a very strong co-benefit and adaptation side to it to build up on this model. Thank you so much. And moving from the value chain to the enabling environment in policy and legislation, as we all know that Pakistan is in the process of developing a policy guideline for carbon markets. It will be soon published with cabinet for approval. And what we are trying to do in that policy is that we are trying to divide the conditional and unconditional goals of Pakistan into sectors, so it becomes very clear for the market which are the sectors open for 6.2 and 6.4 specifically, and VCM under authorized credits, and which are the sectors we are going to keep it for our unconditional services. And also there are some features on the prices, on the corresponding adjustments, and how the process of authorization can be done. So as we are part of this process, and I'm coming to you, Mirwani, manager at the EU Center for Climate Policy, and we focus on carbon market regulation, including compliance, voluntary and Paris-aligned carbon markets. The question for you is that policy landscape for voluntary carbon market and Article 6, what key consideration should host and buyers country prioritize to create an environment which is sustainable and
Such a
effective
pleasure
for
to
carbon
see you. नहीं मैं अभी थोड़ी देर में पैनल में बैठ रहा हूँ, इससे फारिग होकर फिर
different for private sector and for the whole of the government and country-to-country agreements.
Thank you so much for letting me ask
Can't hear you.
maybe I'll just speak louder now, better. Yes, so in light of course work with the private sector on parties consideration of how the sector is part of the carbon market, and what we are doing from the private sector is of course to look for clarity on how investments in carbon credits can be made, and how carbon credits will also be part of the financial solution for achieving actually what the private sector does. And right now, as it's all mentioned, I so right now the negotiations are heated on the possibility of revocation of purposes for ITMOS on registries and reporting, which is all very, very important, and this clarity on this, I would say, international law part is we all needed. But what I would like to focus on, and what I think is not coming up in discussions that much, is how countries regulate the ownership of carbon credits and the trade of carbon credits within the country and cross-border. So we are also participating with our clients in those national governments, and I will maybe highlight a couple of points that we think that governments should be taking into account when inviting corporates to invest in carbon markets. I will also mention that because maybe the voluntary carbon market is seen as an unregulated market, governments will not spending too much time on actually providing regulation on what these assets are, how they should be defined, how they should be accounted for in the balance sheets, and how they should be taxed. So, for example, like Khyber is working out of the Poland, so the EU
Hello everyone.
There is, however, some guidance from, for example, but there's no regulation obligation that requires where carbon credits are present in the balance sheet. And so this clarity is also very, very helpful for countries. And the third thing is taxation of carbon credits. And here we should think about the role of the government, should think about the role that they want private sector to play on the carbon market, whether it's rather to bring the investments or subvention some carbon tax reduction to be made, or rather whether corporates that are participating in the carbon market should kind of share on the proceeds from the carbon credit investment that they do. That's a different consideration for taxing carbon credits. And maybe the last point, just also to do that for other questions to come.
We don't hear it.
Speak about the role of the private sector within the carbon market is for countries to decide whether they should allow private sector participants to use carbon credits to meet part of the compliance carbon pricing obligations. For example, South Africa for meeting their compliance carbon pricing obligations. This also is a clear incentive and message from the government to the private sector that this is actually an instrument that they are welcome to invest in. So I guess positive and
No, thank you so much. I think it was very important for you to mention all these points because as we discuss in our own country, people sometimes, the stakeholders really question about where we are, do we have a perfect system in place, do we have an MRE? So as you mentioned, EU, like the last year, was not sure how the private sector can do this. So it's a, it's a process. It's carbon markets, a topic which is yet being explored, and there are different things we learn every day. So and that also gives a surety that we shouldn't wait for it to get everything to be settled and then get into it. Everyone is getting into the market and learning by doing as well. So thank you for giving those examples and those perspectives from your side. Moving on to the main player, like the investors' point of view, I would say, to Mr. Suraj, who is the Vice President for Global Carbon, Macquarie Group. He has over 13 years of experience in international carbon project development. Mr. Suraj was actively contributed to various climate advisory groups and committees, including VERA, Plan Vivo, Fair Carbon, International Bamboo and Rattan Organization, and Task Force on Sustainable Bamboo Management. So, Suraj, I want to listening from all the panelists today from the different angles and keeping again Pakistan in mind and keeping government in mind from the nature-based solution side. What are your perspectives of how investors feel comfortable investing in a country, and what are the areas you look into when you are getting into a bilateral agreement with countries? And from that point of view, I want to hear what are your thoughts on this.
Yeah, sure, Hadina. Thank you for giving this opportunity. I think the main thing that as an investor we'll be looking at is sort of clarity at the international level and at country level. How an investment can be channeled into a country or into a project or a process. And the assurance from the demand side governments, because we see there's a supply of coming in and countries are preparing themselves with projects and different sectors, but I think we would like to see how the demand would be. Just to give an example, if you look at the pure voluntary market, as per some research, there's at least somewhere like 700 to 800 million unretired credits circulating. So in that space, when I sit in the bank and look at as an investment, we're finding it challenging to find the investment. So that's number one. And number two is how the infrastructure is going to play in countries, how their policies are going to play, and how the corresponding adjustment is being applied. What sort of LOA, the kind of letter of authorization is going to be. That's critical. Just to give you an example, back in the CDL time, which I come from, each country issued the host country approval letter from the CDL. Each country follow the UNFCCC guidelines. So if you compare 2 or 3 country LOAs, host country letters, we had the standard letter. It was very clear. But now since we are in the transitional phase, sometimes when I sit on my desk and look at the projects, we see different formats of LOAs, which is not so healthy. So I'm really grateful for Gold Standard and where our taking leads to have a kind of template. And I think and the UNFCCC is going towards that. So I think we are in the right path. It's about getting that assurance is number 2. And where there is demand, the capital will find it. Like Macquarie and other investors are waiting to channel this kind of channel into the finance. And I think, yeah, we are very optimistic irrespective of anything. We are moving forward as well.
You mentioned about CDM, so let me ask you a follow-up question on this. So, if there is no uniform way of going forward, the LOIs and the projects will have their own way, they will follow their own standards, 6.2 countries follow their own standards. And so, how do you think that as an investor, if you look at a country, when they follow VERA or gold standard, you're more comfortable, or you're more comfortable when they are following their own standards? To look from the point of view that a country like Pakistan should get into and make their own standards, or just follow what's going on globally?
I think if we follow the Article 6 rule book, that should be our main document. And then if anything that is aligned with what Gold Standard does, VERA does, and individual countries, I think we should all follow a standardized approach. Then it's easy from a financial perspective. I come from a carbon project development side, so I understand, but when I try to explain it to our other colleagues, standardization is very important.
Thank you so much. Moving to the next panelist, Robert Staff, I'm sorry, Head of Validation for Open Forest Protocols. The problem of credit generation, like there are less credit being generated for offsetting. Looking at from that point of view, how can a small farmer holder in the region like Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Pakistan better integrate into the global carbon market credits?
Thank you very much for the question. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's now the big problem as we see with protocol is the lack of accessible measurement, reporting, and verification, or MRV. It's a fact that in order to get started in these carbon projects, usually you need a lot of money and a lot of land to get started. And of course, the vast majority of landowners around the world are small and medium-sized ones, so they just don't have access to that, which creates a lot of problems, of course. So if we want to integrate more and more people, and we want to be serious about finding it, we have to, lower the barriers to entry, but of course not lower the standards. The standards should go up, as Owen mentioned. Recently there have been a bunch of scandals. We don't want to repeat of that. So we have to strike a balance, and we think that technology is one way that we can enable such solutions. So if you're a subsistence farmer, even if you have a couple of acres of plot of land, then you're able to get started, and that's what we at the Open Forest Protocol are doing. We've been 3-4 years into our existence, so we're quite small, and we're trying a new model of doing things enabled by new technology. And we also support agroforestry, which can help a lot of these farmers get double income. So, as I said, we have to provide the right incentives for a lot of people to be involved in this process, because the sad truth is the people who have been most affected by climate change, they're in the worst shape. They're in the most developing countries. So we have to have some kind of system to kind of pull them up and to give them the right incentives. Because of course, when you're thinking about your livelihood, you're not necessarily thinking about climate change. But if you can combine both, I think we can create a system that it is very much replicable and scalable across the world.
Thank you so much for that. And we have a very senior government representative from GP programs. And sir, from your point of view, can you share some, the work which KP government is doing and how the SEED project is supporting KP government in opening this voluntary carbon market for Pakistan? As I know that KP government forest is progressing quite fast in this year, and it has achieved milestones such as sustainable reactor strategy, carbon stock assessment, which is tailored into mechanism. So what are your thoughts on the next steps the government is planning to take and with the support of SEED project?
Thank you very much, Aditya. As we all are aware that KP Forest Department is the government has always pioneer and red plus and carbon forestry, but unfortunately when time came up, they harvesting the food, so we get a bit confused. At this time, we have adopted a very systematic way. We are thinking with the seed. We have plotted the RFQ, which will identify us the specific areas where specific carbon forest project will be carried out. For example, identified as the areas where we can have IAM, we have REDD projects, or we can have the ARR projects. So in the next stage of the identification of those areas, it will be easy for us to do the public-private partnership with interested investors. We will have areas and the type of projects on the table, and it will be easy for the investor as well to select and invest in those areas. So basically, we want to bring transparency as well as making the process easier for the investors. And we are hoping that within a few months we will be able to some agreements with investors. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to Mr. Arif Rahman, Senior Advisor to the SEED project. And I waited for you, sir. I want to take the podium. No, come here. I waited till the last because I wanted all the perspectives to be there and from all the panelists, and want to hear from you, like from the project point of view and from the KP point of view. What are you envisioning in the future?
Thank you, Aditya, for standing in at the last minute. Unfortunately, I had a few issues with the discussion. And I think we heard some very interesting perspectives all the way from the mega sort of standards around these days, and also some of the ones that are making it a bit more accessible to the ordinary person. And I think that's the important part from KP's perspective also is, for the participation of maybe smaller landholders and how they can actually enter this market itself. But I think with regards to the work that SEED is doing with the KP government, I think it's very important for us to first understand exactly what is at stake. As we all heard, there's still, the carbon markets, I feel, are still at maybe an embryonic stage at best, and there are so many things happening at the same time, so many standards coming up, so many different methodologies. Just going through gold standards rulebook, or the methodologies, there are tens of methodologies that you could actually work on. So I think developing an understanding of all of this is extremely important, and we also need to understand from KP's perspective is what works best for KP. And I think that's something that we are trying to establish by bringing in all of these players in the conversation. It's also a bit of a misnomer, when we keep on talking about the voluntary carbon markets. I feel like we need to get rid of the word voluntary. I don't think carbon markets or even climate action can be voluntary in there. So, this sort of disconnect between the compliance markets and the voluntary carbon markets is also hitting countries like Pakistan. I remember a year ago designing a project and doing everything by the book, but then finding out in the end, unfortunately, that the investor did not have buyers for carbon credits generated from Pakistan, which was a bit of a shock to me, going through exactly the same standards that anyone else would go through. So I feel like, it's not just the carbon credits that are generated, which unfortunately are non-fungible. So different credits seem to have different values, which needs to somehow change in the long run. But with regards to KP, we want to make sure that we maximize, KP's interest when it comes to the stocks, whatever natural resources there are that we can actually make use of, and take this forward. But one maybe question for everyone that I would like to ask, and this is generally for all the panelists, is how do you think, a country like Pakistan, if I can move beyond KP for a minute and just talk about the entire country, how do you feel all of these different standards coming in and different rules coming up and all this activity? How does a country like Pakistan actually cope with this? Because I just heard Hadika also say or ask whether it would be useful for Pakistan to develop its own standard, and then hearing that, that will be a good thing, but in the end, you also need to make sure that you are still taking care of all the different standards. So there seems to be an inbuilt, complexity as it is. So how does a country like Pakistan actually maximize the opportunities available to it? How do we work with all of you? How do we make sure that we are still in the game without really aligning with a certain standard in the end? I think that's very important. Transparency needs to be taken care of. So anyone wants to have a go, please. Sorry.
I think it's an excellent question, because there's two things going on there. One is you have to develop the capacity to be able to participate, and the other is once you develop the capacity, you're going to need to compete. So there are a lot of places looking for carbon finance, and my feeling is the answer is somewhat the same, in that we heard at the start a really good story of charisma, if you like, of the region, and I think that speaks to the whole of Pakistan. Obviously, it's a special region of Pakistan. Pakistan itself has that reason. But I think if you can become known as a place of integrity, to make it your mission to become a place of integrity, then that in itself gives confidence to buyers. So that's not an easy thing to do, and it's easy for me to say, have integrity. I think you don't need a national standard for the issuance of credits necessarily. What you might want is a national standard for how you think about the market. What do you want to use it for? What sort of partners do you want to invite in? How are you going to judge what a gold standard is there? How are you going to judge if they're good enough? So I think you do need a level of principle and criteria. You probably don't need a standard for issuance. You need almost like a national standard for how you want to behave and how you want others to behave within your system. It speaks to that activity.
That's a very valid question from when I sit from the science. I think 100% agree with Owen. I think back in the day, CBN introduced so much robust methodologies. More standards are doing not robust methodologies. Three standards of the methodologies. As principle, I would follow CROA guidelines, which are like carbon should be real, measurable, you can verify, non-compressible, no double counting. That would be really good. So I agree with Owen. And if there's a new standard, it takes time. It takes more time for validation. Like investors, so we don't get confidence in the new standard. So time might be taken long. Rather we adopt well-established global standards. And one, like he said, in the Pakistan context, that would be more easy for investors to get comfortable with projects and do more activities, is what I want to say.
just purely just a supplementary question to this. For climate partner, is there a particular preference of which way you want to go in terms of developing a project? Do you have a preference for a particular standard, or would you treat this on a case-to-case basis, where you would look at whether there are, let's say, co-benefits and maybe then go with gold standard or otherwise? But you think in Pakistan's perspective, how do you think climate standards can actually work with the different standards, come in and see what can be the best possible route for Pakistan?
I agree with the group. I think that is, for us as a project developer, it's immensely helpful to be able to work with standards that we're already familiar with. It's taking us a lot of resources to understand kind of all these different governmental things that are popping up now. And if we have to put resources in understanding those markets, we can't put resources into development projects. So this is really about easing this process. And I think from our end, if it's BCS or both, it doesn't really matter. We have experience with both. But if it's standards that are inspired or based on the voluntary carbon market, it would make our lives a lot easier. And adding on top of this, it would be great to have a seat at the table or to at least know who to reach out to. We're sometimes challenging quite a bit to understand who from the government we need to reach out to if we have a question or want to speak. So to have very clear responsibilities and invite us to exchange our opinions, that would be of great help to us.
Radoslav, my last question to the panel. I think the future lies in technology also, in the sense that technology is going to play a huge part in the way we not just register, verify, and go out of risk, but also to issue really carbon credits. I know that the open source protocol is also using a lot of technology, but how does that make you different from maybe some of the other standards out there? And is it easier than to work with technology than actually doing it the other way?
Thank you very much for the question. Technology is now used throughout the industry. I think there are very recently announced that they will be using remote sensing and other technologies to basically increase the accuracy of their verification system. What I would say is that yes, remote sensing AI very much are the future. Of course, they cannot be the entire story, because even with remote sensing, you can get very accurate, but it's usually very expensive. If you want very high resolution with AI, of course, we can analyze a lot of data, but if you analyze that data in the first place, then they're seeing statistics jump in, jump out. So they always supplement it, and we always use only cloud data to use that technology with. What I would say is that we should only be looking at new devices or new power algorithms, but also innovation in the business model, the way we do things. And one of our goals is, or missions to be is to be very transparent. So most of the data, unless it's confidential, is stored in the blockchain and made publicly available. So anyone that wants to access the data behind the carbon credits can see it. If you cross that you can do due diligence. And there's a lot of innovation as well. Also when it comes to validation, there's multiple validators and basically use third parties that some of them use remote sensing, some of the AI cloud data providers, and all of them independently assess the project. So we kind of have a holistic view of the entire project. And this is how we can, on the one hand, use innovative technology, and on the other is, you combine it in innovative ways to create a system that we think is very, very, no system is bulletproof, but it's very resistant to any integration. So that's why.
Thank you. Before I can actually thank the panelists, I'm going to invite Dr. Roman Mukhtar for some closing remarks and for thank you, Arifa, and thank you, Hadika, for moderating the current session. I have the easiest part I'm extremely grateful to the panelists for giving their time to us. I'm extremely thankful to the government of KP to be here. We had representatives from government of Sindh sitting throughout our presentation and other audience which have been a really nice audience for us. I am especially thankful to Ministry of Climate Change and the Secretary Climate Change to come and conduct this session and say thank
Thank you very much for the participants in this carbon markets. It's the most rapidly evolving segment of the Paris Agreement. It's tricky also. But looking at other countries around us in the world, Pakistan, I think it was about time that Pakistan had seriously started establishing its own carbon framework. We are almost there. The government must have what is trickier for us is not many people understand it properly, not even in the line ministries, so we have to take this message to them. The other question that sometimes bothers us is the policy leverage, that after all, it is not an infinite resource, it's a finite resource. And the cost of generating a credit as we go, the marginal cost has to go up. So where to draw that line is sometimes bothers us. But I think it is about time that we also start seriously. And the framework should be ready by the end of December of this year. So we are looking forward to it. And thank you to all the panelists for this valuable time. Thank you.
एक नॉर्मल पिक्चर
या आप साइड पे हो ना, क्या नाम
एंड्रू
Thanks a lot, Gail. That has been really helpful.
सर ये लॉन्ग टर्म स्ट्रेटजीज का
Go for
Sorry. Right after the adoption,